In previous videos, we had stated our problem: to build a backend for a real estate agency to be used on the web and smart devices. To do this, we had started by creating a KB and the property transaction, and had set the web backend to be generated in Ruby in the cloud. Next, we had GeneXus build the application and finally entered a property into the system from a browser. In this way, we could continue developing the entire web backend. But what about the backend for mobile devices? What kind of application do we have in mind for the smart device? It's an application that'll be used by real estate agents. We start with the simplest task. An agent needs to see the list of properties. He selects a property from the list to see more details about the selected property, from which he may need to change some data. So, how do we implement the panel to work with properties? In the transaction, we go to the Patterns section and choose Work With from the patterns that can be applied to the transaction to this entity, that is to say, work with properties that will be used on smart devices, not on the web. This pattern will implement the list of real estate properties, and for each property, its details. To do this, just like with all patterns, you only have to select the checkbox and save. Here we can see what's been created. So what do we have to do to generate and try our application for smart devices? Create a menu or point of entry. For the web, it was created automatically by GeneXus. It was the developer menu. To make this entry for smart devices, we created an object of dashboard type. We add an item to invoke the Work With Properties pattern created before. And we configure its properties. For example, if we want the icon to be displayed with a customized image when tapping on the screen. We import the image from a file. We can change its description. We can also configure its header and the dashboard icon. At this point, we can have GeneXus create the programs just by pressing F5. But for which device? Since we haven't changed anything, it'll be for the default option, Android. As we can see, GeneXus opens an Android emulator for us to try the application if we don't have an actual device to do it. Here we can see the property that we had entered. At the same time, the developer menu is opened in the browser. In addition to the links to execute the web backend, it'll have a QR code and a download link related to the SD application. Why? In order to load and install the compiled application in our device and try it there instead of using the emulator. We can send this URL to anyone who has a QR code reader installed. So that they can download and install the application to give it a try. Note that there's only one listed property, and it's the one that we added using the web developer menu. Tapping on it shows its details. Since the address is an address domain attribute, the application gives the option to view it in a map. The image is shown because the application interprets this type of data and displays it correctly on the device screen. The real estate agent may want to change some of this data, for example, the type of operation. To do so, he would have to edit this information. He changes the operation to rent and saves. He may even be visiting a property to add it to his property portfolio. Note that since the identifier is auto-numbered, it doesn't prompt the user to enter a value. we enter its name. Listing date will assume today's date value by default, because of the default rule that we stated in the transaction, so we don't need to enter a value. But in case we want to enter a value, since it's of date type, the application is able to understand its meaning and displays the date picker, which is a device application to easily select a date. Now we'll enter the address. The application is aware that the following data is an image, so it gives the option to take a photo at that moment using the device or select one of the stored images. We'll take a photo of the property we have in front of us. Next, we leave the following field, operation, with the sale value, and save. Now we can see the new property in the list of properties. Just like in the web backend, the business rules that we stated are triggered. For example, entering an address was mandatory. Note that if we want to delete it, we are not allowed to do so. We may want to filter the list by rent operation. Or go back and do a wider search. For example, by address. What information is being shown in the list? The property's image and name. We may want to show the address instead of or in addition to the name. This and other customizations can be easily and quickly made using GeneXus. In the Work with Smart Devices object, I open the section that implements the list of properties layout. In addition to the name, I add the address. I save and press F5 to have GeneXus generate the application again. This is a small example of how easy it is to customize the application. We've been able to create what we wanted, one part of the web backend and another part running on the smart device. With a few easy steps, we can have GeneXus generate the same application for devices with iOS or BlackBerry operating systems, just like we can have the web application generated for Java or .NET instead of Ruby. Let's see some real-life examples. You can build any type of application in the same way. For example, a system to track your personal finances. And lots more. Would you like to add security features? Or more entities which are interrelated? Would you like to customize what's being displayed, such as interfaces, the order in which data is displayed, or the search is available? Do you need to add actions, such as scheduling visits on your calendar? Or add a client to the address list in the device? Or maybe send messages? To be continued.